Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Brief, the show where we unpack the real, raw, and sometimes messy moments behind marketing careers that actually shape the journey. Today's guest is someone very special, and I'm very excited to speak with Chandan. He's a seasoned product marketer with 18 years of experience and currently the co founder of Event. Over the years, he's helped global brands like Samsung, Walmart, and Snapdeal build high impact product marketing strategies. He's been helping early stage founders and aspiring PMMs navigate their own marketing chaos through coaching. So, Chandan, thank you so much for coming on my show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shruti. And I've been watching your show for quite some time from the first episode, and it's a humbling experience to be here. And there has been quite a few fabulous guests that have been in your show in the past. So to share the same space with them, it's quite an honor. So thank you for having me here today.
It's my pleasure, Chandan, and I know we have been talking about this for a long time. And I think you were the third person I reached out to and talked about my podcast, what I want to do with the product marketing thing and how I build this. So thank you so much for being one of the most approachable person on LinkedIn, and I really appreciate all the help and mentorship you have given me so far and still continue to do so. So thank you so much.
It's always been a pleasure talking to you.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited to actually get started with the conversations and questions that I have lined up for you today. So, I just wanted to start off with a little bit of background on your career. And you have spent 17 years across SaaS, EdTech, e commerce. So, what is one of the messiest marketing moments that has still been etched in your memory? What would it be? Like, we would love to hear.
Yeah, I think every marketeer who's been around for some time now would agree to it that marketing always has been a messy thing. There's nothing that goes no matter how much you plan. And that has been the case with me through and throughout my career. But yeah, one incident that I still remember, and that has been etched in my memory, and I talk a lot about it even in LinkedIn and in my newsletter because the learning has been so good during that situation that it kind of allowed me to apply it in different circumstances going forward in my career. And this way back in 2012 when I moved out of Walmart, having spent about 5 years with them. And that was a time when e-commerce was growing globally. Walmart was was already an established brand. And I wanted to get a pie of this, get into this space, coming from brick and mortar retail to e-com. And I joined an early stage startup with all the excitement that I could think of, hoping to make a mark. I knew what I was getting into. I knew the unpredictability and the uncertainty which is there with any startup, but I wasn't prepared for what I was getting into until I went into that organization. So the situation was we were doing the beta launch of the platform 3 months from the time I joined. And while I was aware of it, I assumed that the team there must have done some amount of work, before me joining the team. But when I was onboarded, I realized that the operations team was handling a lot of sales enablement work. The customer success person was managing the website, the UI, the copy, and the founder was managing the entire positioning and messaging, and it flowed from him to all the other team. There was no narrative consistency, nothing, and they were planning to do a beta launch for a very close segment of audience in a particular market, and they expected me to run with it with whatever pieces were there. So this was a very, very tight and tough situation for me to get into, especially coming from an established organization where it was very process driven and I had people to lean on to. Here I was on my own, the founding PMM, suddenly in a situation where there were so many jigsaw pieces that I had to bring together and fulfill this, complete this puzzle. It wasn't easy, very anxious, very tensed. But I realized that if you have to deliver, we have to find some common ground. So my first approach was to sit with the founder, who was also my manager, and make a laundry list of everything that they've done without any judgment. And obviously, I was not in a position to judge anyways. I was a very new person. I took a laundry list of everything, and I did the same thing with every team which was managing the part of work that I had to own it now. So when I went to the ops guy, I wanted to understand from him, what is it that you're doing for sales enablement? How are you doing the outreach? And it was a two-way business. You had the seller side of it, you had the user side of it, and you had to engage both set of users, so both set of audiences. So, I took a laundry list of everything that they did, went to the CS guy, again did the same thing. What is it that you are doing for the website or the landing page, and so on and so forth. It allowed me to have with me the complete context of what was being done, where I saw gap, how am I going to address those issues without sounding at somebody who's was just stepping into someone else's domain. Having done that, I went to the founder again, sat down with him. And the very first thing I told them is, we can agree to disagree, but we have to find common ground, because at the end of the day, if this things falls apart, the beta launch that we're planning in a big way is not going to be successful. Or even currently, we are in a situation where I don't see success happening or we achieving our objective. And so that was a very, very tough situation. While I'm talking, it may sound okay, we can handle the situation, nothing big. But when you are in a team of 10 founding members who've already been handling a lot of those things, and they
Hmm.
feel that they know what they are doing, and for an outsider like me to step into it and then take ownership, and then everybody is watching you, now let's see what is this new guy is going to deliver, which is usually the situation in a startup.
Yeah.
Can become, I think I handled it well, having taken everybody into consideration, having onboarded everybody as part of the project rather than isolating everyone. We were able to come up with a framework as to what is it that we're going to do. And eventually we ran with it. And I think we had a decently successful campaign at the end of 3 months. What really helped me here was the team knew that they couldn't go en masse. They had a very niche specific audience that they were targeting from the very beginning. So for me to really run behind one ICP from the onset, what was something which really helped direct everything in one, put everything in one direction and get the desired outcome that we were looking at. This was, I think this is probably the biggest and the messiest of all campaigns that I've handled. So everything that I talk about currently in my newsletter or even in LinkedIn. So the other day I talked about when you join a new startup, what is the first thing that you should do? I talked about this whole loneliness piece. Then in my newsletter, when I talked about planning your 30, 60, 90-day, a lot of the learning that I had during this campaign is what I had put into practice later on also. And I
Okay.
shared this, and this is how you should go. Then, when I tell somebody when you join a new company, you should not go with preconceived notion. You should not. You should not have any ideas as to how this organization is to operate. Just go with an open mind was also something that I learned while handling this project. Although I came with preconceived notion that I was assuming that everybody must have done some work, which was not true. So these are the learnings I think I had applied or I share or I apply in my current job. And this was one of the messiest campaign that I've ever done.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And you have mentioned about startups, and I have always been like a startup girl. I've always worked in startups. You are doing everything, and it just does not matter if it's in your JD or not. Like, you just have to be at it. I know that startups often mean that we are doing more with less. So, can you actually share a time where you were with limited resources? I think we have all been there who have worked in startups, who have pushed you to actually innovate unexpectedly. Like, it would be like a voila moment when you actually see something that work really well for you when given the limited resources, and how that shaped your overall growth strategy.
Yeah, I think Shruti, there's an interesting question, and I have a campaign that comes to my mind. Actually, this campaign is something very close to my heart, but this is not in a startup per se startup that I had experienced this whole lack of resources thing. Rather, it was an established brand that I was working as head of marketing, but for a division which was getting built within the company. So we were like a startup environment in a larger ecosystem and for an established brand. So when I joined them, we had resources and I had a big team. We had the funding, we had the money, and we could plan for it. So we've been building this whole online marketplace for fashion and lifestyle product. And I had the go ahead initially for, whatever is required to do, let's just do it. I had the funding. Like I said, the resources were there in place. But like in any startup, which way the wind is going to blow, you never know. Tomorrow something happens and, they just cut budget. They just say that, no, everything is no longer available to you. And that happened with
Yes.
me. While I had a small team to work with, I did not have the resources in terms of the financing or the kind of people or the campaigns that I wanted to launch. But, typically your CEO, always the expectation would be there. I have cut your budget, no doubt, but I want the result which we had planned for. So this
Yeah.
is a very tricky situation. We usually, when you plan campaign, I look at funnel, I look at channel, and then there is allocation of budgets and everything. You then understand which are the ways in which you're going to engage the audience, and then you do the entire pipeline and the journey and everything. So we
Right.
did that. We were ready with the campaign, and when this resource crunch happened, and we still had to deliver, and there were recalibration of what the expectations were, but you still had to deliver. and my team had to deliver because I was heading the entire. So what we did at that point in time, one of my brand managers came to me and told me, Chandan, Instagram is really booming. Facebook bought Instagram for $1 billion, and it struck me that if this platform has become big and somebody has paid $1 billion for a product like this, there could be some hidden benefit behind this platform. It's a social platform at the end of it all, and we were launching a fashion and lifestyle product. Instead of investing money on bigger campaign, what we did started scrapping for all the up and coming influencers. And this is 2014, I'm talking 2014, 15, when the whole idea of influencers did not exist, but there were a lot of bloggers. There were a lot of people who would write good blogs in Medium and other publications. A lot of people who were up and coming and using YouTube and Instagram in a big way. So we reached out to every one of those people. We got a bunch of them whose content aligned with what we were trying to do. I reached out to a bunch of online magazines which were doing pretty okay. They were not the big ones, but they were okay. They were also at a threshold of growing. We partnered with them, and this allowed me, the whole team, to apply and implement the campaign strategy, which kind of really helped us for a fraction of money which otherwise we would have spent. So these are the things that you have to do every time you're in a startup, and this opened my eyes at that point in time to really understand the power of influencing that goes behind how you really engage or create a campaign that would really help people understand what your product is. This was a very successful campaign for a fraction of money, and I felt that the resource crunch or whatever was cut from my team was absolutely blessing in disguise, because it allowed us to funnel our investment in a direction which kind of
Yeah.
really boomed in the long run. So this is pretty interesting, and I feel you talked about being a founding PMM. So founding PMM will always have to think on your feet, especially when you're working in a startup. Resource crunch is something that you will have to go in thinking that I'm going to face this. So even in 2012, when I launched that campaign, that beta campaign, we distributed leaflets. That's it. We distributed
Hmm.
leaflets door to door. Although we were an online platform, everybody talks about digital campaigns and everything. We distributed leaflets, and it worked. We had a QR code at that point in time that allow you to come to my landing page. If you sign up, you get a gift card. People signed up and it worked. So you have to think on your feet. You have to be innovative. You cannot let go of an opportunity that is there, which you may feel insignificant, but test it out and apply it, and you would
Absolutely.
see it may work, it may not work. Those are the risks that is there associated with startup, and you have to take that risk.
Working in startup has always taught me to be always on my toes, like think like a entrepreneur. You have limited budgets. You have to be very fast in thinking what would be the right way to go forward with that.
Oftentimes, I tell any aspiring PMM or anybody who's looking at a career in startup, the one big benefit that you will get is what you just talked about, being innovative, think like an entrepreneur. So what really happens is if you go with a fixed mindset that, a tunnel vision that this is how things are going to be. If 1 plus 1 is not 2, then I'm not happy with it. Then you'll not survive. I mean, you're just going to be there for about a couple of months, maybe a year, but totally dissatisfied, and you'll move on. It's not meant for everybody. But otherwise, if you go inside knowing very well what you're going to get into, the environment and everything else is going to rub off. Even if you have never thought of becoming an entrepreneur or having an entrepreneurial mindset, the environment itself is so contagious that you would be pushed in that direction. And that is something when you leave eventually and move on in your career, it will help you because you're thinking out of the box. You are always challenged. You have to stretch yourself like a rubber band. So all of these things you may not get in a process driven organization. And that's the reason I always say that startups are not meant for everybody, but whoever gets into it, and if they are able to just go there with an open mind, it could be a blessing in disguise because you come up with so much of experience, so much of good learning that in other environment, when you apply all of that, it's only going to benefit you or the team or the project that you're working on.
Absolutely. And what I love about this is I started as a content writer. And even then, I was given a space where I was just growing and doing the work of a PMM. The way that environment pushes you to explore so many different fields. Just makes you think very fast and be very proactive in your approach. Moving on to, so we discussed something that worked. We all love success stories, but I really want to dig deeper. I want to understand, like, what's your one go-to thing as a marketing leader? Like, first move when something breaks, like when something doesn't work out, or just a launch campaign that failed. Like, how would you react in that situation where the expectation is you panic?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, we started the conversation with the word messy, and like I said, any marketer would solve will tell you that marketing is always messy. Things never go as per plan. So eventually, you are going to reach the Zen mode where you soak in everything. So my go-to, approach is always to just introspect and find a quiet space to just think about it and get the context in place. I always go in hoping that what we are planning for or what we are executing is going to give the desired result that we are hoping for. And that's the attitude with which I go in, and that is the thing that I tell my team that things may go sideways, which is fine, but we are not going to plan for it. We're not going to plan for things going sideways. We're going to plan for things going correct. And we achieving the results that we were looking for. If things go sideways, then we will plan for, and that is me as a leader. It's for me to take that onus and responsibility and manage it. So my go-to, approach is always to, if things go sideways, is to just take a moment to think about it, what went wrong, and reflect upon what we did. And then the context in place. Talk to the people who have been involved in this particular project, maybe from my team, or maybe from some other team, or maybe from the leadership. Just get the context in place, because that allows you to now think in a meaningful way, think in more better way, so that the next steps or the decisions that you have to take is more well informed. It's always easy to feel agitated. It's always easy to get tensed. And we all get tense. We all get agitated, tense as a leader, things not going your way. It's frustrating. At the end of the day, it is frustrating. It is disappointing. It can break you. But when I know the context behind it, when I know what all could have been done in a different way, you have the answers in your mind. And then with that understanding or with that realization, it's only positive that you would get out of it. You can only move
Right.
in the right direction from there. So my go-to option is always to take that moment, introspect, find that common space where I can just think about it, and then have all the context in place and just run with it. And then hopefully the next time when you do this, you know where you went wrong and you put the right foot forward.
Yeah, I love that answer, and it definitely resonates with me as well. I think if you fix the mindset, half of the challenge is solved. Like, if you're thinking from a success mindset, you will be able to navigate that messy situation as well. So I think I high five on that, and I definitely resonate with that. So I want to mention that you talk a lot about product marketing and startups. So, what do you think, aspiring product marketers that are mostly the listeners of this podcast as well, do you consider startups as an exciting opportunity for someone who's aspiring to be a product marketer, or do you like wish them to have a more restricted space and have a more organized company structure and all of that?
Yeah, so there are two parts to it. One, first thing is the person themselves. They need to be clear in their own understanding of what startup is going to offer and what established organization are. So for aspiring PMMs or anybody, looking or hoping to get into a PMM role, that understanding has to come from their own best space in their mind that I want to be in startups or I want to be an established organization. Now, that clarity can come by conversations, doing your own research, or talking to people who have been in startups or established organization, and then taking that conscious decision. That's one part of it.
Yeah.
So once you have that clarity, you know which direction is best for you. That's one. Let's say you are open-minded and you're okay getting into a startup vis-a-vis or an established organization purely because your first priority is to get your foot in the door and become a PMM. Now you want to look at a growth scenario where you can, first use your experience as a platform for moving to the next higher role. So if it is your priority is the work and you are totally okay with whether it's a startup or it's an established brand, for these people, I would say at the end of the day, what you have to look at is what you want to get into, what kind of projects you're looking at, what kind of work that you're looking at, the kind of experience that you want. See, one of the things that goes in everybody's mind, and I did a poll recently where I asked people, do you think you should join startups? 59 people percent of the respondents said that only if you are ready to take risk. Now, the
Wow.
thing is with startups, this was true. This is still true with startups. And this has always been true. You're not building something from scratch. You never know how the market is going to operate. The environment might change tomorrow. The whole technology landscape might change. Now we've seen that happening with AI. It's always a risk. Anybody getting into startups, they understand that I'm getting into uncharted territory. There is uncertainty as far as my career is concerned. There could be instability. It may not resonate with what I'm looking short term, long term. But the truth is, earlier this was true, but now this whole big factor of risk is there in established companies also. And in the last 5 years, Shruti, in fact, and I was writing about it yesterday, the average 18 million people a year have been laid off across industry, which is significantly
Mhm.
low number. This is happening post-COVID because a lot of things have changed. Now there is so much of aggressive push for AI adoption and so on and so forth. So the big barrier which used to keep people away from startup was risk. But now that's a reality no matter where you go, whether it's a startup or you're looking at an established brand, this factor is there either ways. So if I take this thing out of the equation for any aspiring PMM looking for a job or their first product marketing role, there are three things I tell them that you should look at, startup or otherwise. Look at the project that you want to work with. If a startup is working on a particular project or building a product that you feel very passionate about, you think I'm very excited to work on this, go for it. Second thing, the team. Startups always have small teams, and that team defines the culture. They do not have structured processes or a set way of doing things. So look at the team, talk to them. If you feel that these are the bunch of guys that I could work with day in day out, then that's the people that you want to associate with. Even with established companies, it's always going to be the team. Third factor is your own growth. How much of flexibility, opportunity, or freedom you're going to get to really apply your existing skills or acquire more skills to become a better PMM. Startups are always going to give you that opportunity in a much bigger way as compared to an established brand because they have set processes. And within that set, within that ecosystem of an existing process, you have to adapt yourself. Wherein in a startup, it's green field. So you can just roll up your sleeve, you can innovate, you can, experiment with things. Something will work, something will not work. But at the end of the day, you have that flexibility. Of course, factors of remuneration, everything will come into the picture. But if I keep all this consistent thing aside, startups today, apart from being riskier, which is there with the other organization also, allows you to pick and choose the kind of projects that you want to work with. It's a low hanging fruit. You can easily go and interact with the CEO to understand what kind of a mindset the team has, what kind of thought process flows. You are very close to the mission that they're going to execute on. You're going to be very close to the product that they're going to build. So all of this exposure is gold, especially when you move on eventually to bigger things in life. That is the experience which you're going to apply. And that is why when we talked about the Messi project, I told you about my learning from 2012, which are still applicable. Had
Right.
I not learned those things in that startup environment, I think maybe a lot of things, maybe I would have learned it in different environment, but that experience allowed me to apply and be a different person altogether when I moved on in my career. So this is
Mhm.
something people should think about and take an informed decision what really works for you. Not everybody is comfortable with uncertainty. That's perfectly fine. But if you're able to take that risk and if you just go ahead with an open mindset, this could be an opportunity which would allow you to blossom as a PMM.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it just reminds me of my own career trajectory as well. I would have been in a much different position, different environment or space as well if I was not starting in the startup culture, because it actually made me more confident about my passion for good products that are making impact. So I think one advice I would like to add on to all of the things that you have added is that you should have the passion for the problem that product is solving or the company's after. Like the mission statement, the value proposition they have is something that if it resonates with you, I think you do a better job, not just as a product marketer, but as a value add to
So
that startup.
absolutely.
Because a lot of the ownership is on you as well. So personally, it mattered to me on what company I was working on, what product or problem they were solving. So and it's still the same. It has never changed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I specifically work with aspiring PMMs. I tell them that only if you feel that you are open to working with startups. And it's not always that I advocate. I also tell them about the red flags. There are always red flags that you have to be mindful of. Maybe it's a scattered team. There is no clarity. Like, I know one thing is you're right, which I also said that you have to be aligned to the mission of the company. And in startup, you're going to be very close to that mission, but at the same time, if there is no clarity as to what you're going to do, why they require you, why there is an importance being put in your role, then you might as well step back and feel that they're not ready yet. So as much as you should go ahead and aggressively pursue a startup role is what I encourage people to do. I also tell them you should know when to step away from it, because it's not always going to be a good match for you unless and until and you're able to pick and identify those red flags. If the team does not have clarity, they're just going by the herd's mentality of, oh, we need to hire a PMM. No, you need to hire a PMM when you're ready for a PMM and you know what this PMM is going to deliver. So when I started my career in the startup, the things were all messy, and that was the project was messy. But that did not mean it did not mean that the team did not have that they required a PMF. They had clarity. They knew what was expected of me when I joined. So they knew that these are the things that I could deliver. Yes, it was all over the place because there was no PMM before me. So as a founding PMM in a startup environment, you should go ahead and understand that there will be red flags. And if those red flags are very critical and you feel that this is not safe enough for me to take this bet, don't take that bet.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question is really interesting. What's one lesson that you've learned the hard way now you swear by? Like you cannot make that mistake again. Something that every marketer should know. I think I would love for you to share that wisdom with us as well.
Yeah, I think every marketers know this nowadays. So I think one thing that I swear by nowadays is data. You know, I feel for a very long time, and the previous decades, marketeers like me who moved into product marketing from primarily brand and the typical CPG marketing manager role into product marketing, we were not so data driven beyond research. You would rely on quantitative research. You would take those insights and you would invest it in building your project or the campaigns that you're driving. But beyond that, you would look at secondary research, someone else doing it and letting you know if it has resonated, not resonated. Have you achieved? Has there been an impact or not? And for a long time, I was that kind of a marketeer who would more focus on the core marketing aspect of the job at hand rather than looking at data or any kind of statistics which would allow you to refine your campaigns or refine your work in a much more effective way. Then came digital marketing in 2010. Start companies started investing in it. SEO and all those paid ads and everything becoming more prominent. There was a lot of investment going behind it, but it allowed you to have very specific information in terms of how those campaigns were doing. So things started changing. And then come 2020, you had specialists coming into this kind of role like data scientists help you further. So I feel I took a long time to really value the importance of using data as a parallel lever to building your campaigns or honing or making your marketing effort more efficient or effective rather. So I think this is one lesson I swear by. I've done enough campaigns in my career to realize this now that if you're not a data driven marketer, you're going to miss out on a lot of things. People can take you for a ride. When credits will be due for you, you will not get those credit. And you would also not know how your campaign is falling apart. So, for example, even for PMMs, whether it's startup or establishment, you hear a lot when we talk about PMM. The only association that comes to our mind is messaging, positioning, GTM, this and that. But the reality is, all of this translates into something which is an application. Whether you do it or there's a separate team which does it, all of this funnels into some sort of application. Now you need to know where these applications are getting plugged in the larger GTM strategy. If it's a campaign, if it's just a CTA in your landing page, or just a messaging, or it is just an email drip campaign, or it could be a training manual, it could be anything. But you need to know all your efforts getting into all of these things and how you attribute them back to your effort. That attribution is data. Has it resonated? Has this translated into some clicks? Has it resulted into some signups for demos or wait list or whatever it is? Has the number of open rate gone up? as far as your email campaigns are concerned. Maybe you're not directly responsible, but as a PMM, you've done the entire content piece behind it, and that has been translated into copy. So if you're not a data-driven marketer now, and I swear by it, you're going to fall behind as compared to somebody else who's more data driven. A lot of talks are happening around competitive intel. What is competitive intel? It's just translation of all the insights that you get from your competition into certain parameters, right? Those parameters that translates into matrices or KPIs, and you have to be somebody who understand all of these factors. Only then you're going to be a good marketeer, because I think the investment in creativity as well as numbers has to be 50-50. It has to balance each other. That was not there earlier when I started my career. We were more concerned with the tagline, the copy, this and that, the creative. I was more concerned with how many more GSM was the creative for. Those things are great. These are important, but customer is discerning about all those factors. What really matters and what resonates, and to understand that and the outcome of it. I think you have to be data driven, and this is one thing I swear by. I tell everybody: invest, learn about this, apply it in your work, have this number, because it's only going to make your work more effective.
Right. Yeah, I think to add on to that point, I truly like I have seen many debates and discourses around product marketing not very data driven, and they are just a storytelling, just messaging and positioning, like just talking about the product. Like you are not data driven enough is what other conversations I've I think maybe it's my LinkedIn algorithm that's showing me all of that. Like if you come down to those numbers rather than just talking about vanity metrics, I think that's where the whole confusion also goes away. And I think we still need to have more conversations around marketers in general being more data driven.
Yeah. And the other thing is, Shruti, the days are far behind us when it would take you 15 years, 17 years to reach a leadership position. Nowadays, people become leaders very early in their career, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years, you're already in a director position, you're looking at a VP position or beyond. And when you start your career, well, this is too far out to look for, but when you reach that stage, you are not going to talk about, "Oh, my team created this messaging, or we created this whole positioning loop," or whatever. You're going to
Exactly.
talk about what you said. I'm going to go and I'm only going to present about the impact that I was able to generate, the business impact that my work, my team delivered, how it resonated or translated into what objectives that we were chasing, and how much of it was my contribution is what you're going to look at. And I've seen this. I've worked with bigger companies also. When I was head of marketing in Snapdeal, I was heading one of the verticals. We only used to talk about numbers. Excuse me. Nobody talked about what campaign, that was behind the line. It was like a BTS thing. You did what you did. But now tell me, in an Excel sheet, what has been the impact on traffic, conversions, purchase, this and that? If you as a marketer today, in this day and age where things are moving so fast and there are so many tools to help you deal with this, you're not adapt to it, then you are not looking at success, or your own growth is something might be hampered. And there are enough and more tools out there, I feel, that you should use to really enable you to be a more data-driven marketer.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And people listening to us will be taking a lot of notes today, just trying to understand how to be a more impactful and data driven marketer. So, yeah, and that's a wrap on today's conversation with Chandan. And I loved how he broke down navigating a very chaotic, messier marketing environment, and from launching with zero playbook to crafting resourceful campaigns with QR codes back in 2012. So, I think that's something that's still stuck with me, Chandan, because it's really interesting. And 2012 was way behind. Like, it's been a long time to that. And I think,
That was how, leaflets used to work.
yeah,
So when I think back, and I sometimes wonder that that was a time when we did door-to-door delivery of leaflets just to get people,
exactly.
in fact, not door-to-door exactly. We used to put it inside newspapers, which you'd get
Hmm.
delivered at 5 o'clock in the morning. And those newspapers would have those leaflets inside them. So marketing has come a long way from those things.
So, if you are early in product marketing career or thinking about breaking into startups, Chandan dropped some serious gold here, and you should definitely take some notes. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a fellow marketer, and leave a review. It helps more people discover these real, unfiltered stories from the world of product marketing. This is Shruti signing off.